Have you ever had the feeling that something isn't quite right? That the world around you, your friends, your body, the sky itself, might not be what it seems? What if I told you there's a serious theory that says everything you've experienced might be running inside someone else's computer? This is WhyDecrypted, and today we're diving into one of the strangest and most haunting ideas in modern science and philosophy: the simulation hypothesis. Once upon a time, this was just science fiction. The Matrix, Inception, The Truman Show. But today, it's something else entirely. In fact, some of the brightest minds in philosophy, theoretical physics, and even computer science think it's entirely plausible that we're living inside an incredibly advanced simulation. This idea didn't come from a movie studio. It came from an Oxford philosopher, Nick Bostrom. In 2003, Bostrom published a paper that quietly exploded minds. He laid out a logical framework, what's now known as the simulation argument. And here's how it goes. There are only three possible realities. 1. Civilizations go extinct before they develop simulation technology advanced enough to simulate conscious beings. 2. Civilizations do reach that level, but choose not to run simulations for one reason or another. And 3. Civilizations reach that level, and they do run simulations. Probably millions, billions, or more. If the third possibility is true, then the number of simulated minds would vastly outnumber biological ones. Statistically, that would mean that you and I are probably among the simulated. And that's not because we're special in any way, it's just because there will be vastly more simulated minds than there would be biological ones. Let that sink in. Okay, so at this point people often say, sure, but video games are still just games. We can't simulate a whole world. But think about it. 40 years ago we had things like Pong. That's 2 rectangles and a dot. Today we have virtual worlds with millions of real-time variables, physics engines, ray traced light, and lifelike NPCs. We also have AI learning how to respond to human behaviour. Now imagine a civilization a million years ahead of us. What would their simulations look like? Could they simulate not just a forest or a galaxy, but an entire universe, down to the quantum level? And more importantly, could they simulate you? Your voice, your thoughts, your memories, your sense of self? And if you couldn't tell the difference, then what is the difference? So here's where things get eerie. Some physicists have noticed that the laws of physics look a lot like a code. For example, the speed of light isn't just a fast number, it's the maximum information transfer rate, like a computer's maximum processor speed. Space appears to be quantized, not infinitely smooth, but divided into tiny, discrete chunks, just like pixels. And quantum particles? They behave probabilistically, until they're observed, like code that doesn't render until the camera turns towards it. Sound familiar? Well, that's exactly what a video game does to conserve processing power. It renders only what the player sees. So is the universe just optimizing performance? Now, here's something that actually causes jaws to drop. A physicist named James Gates, working on string theory, found something unexpected buried in the equations. And those things were error-correcting codes, the same kind used in computers and data transmissions to prevent glitches. In other words, we may be finding actual lines of code embedded in the very math that describes our universe. And if you were looking for signs of a simulation, finding literal code is kind of a big deal. Gates himself said, "It's as if the universe is based on computer code. It's not even metaphorical anymore." So let's talk about the big glitch in the simulation hypothesis. and that's consciousness. If we are simulated, how can a bunch of code feel anything? How can we have experiences, emotions, and memories? And this is where philosophy and neuroscience collide. Some say consciousness is just computation, an emergent property from a complex pattern. Others believe it is something deeper, maybe even something non-computable. In that case, no computer, no matter how powerful, could simulate consciousness, because consciousness would come from outside the simulation. Could that be a clue? Could consciousness be the only real thing in a virtual world? Are you the non-simulated part of all of this? Okay, so let's assume this is a simulation. Who built it? One possibility is that future humans running simulations of their ancestors to study history built it. That's called the ancestral simulation. Another theory says it could be a kind of cosmic entertainment system, like a hyper-advanced Netflix, only the shows are the entire universe. There's even a more spiritual interpretation, that the simulator is a form of a higher intelligence, a creator if you will, but not in the traditional religious sense such as God. More like a scientist, curious to observe conscious life unfold inside an artificial space. And here's the twist. Maybe the simulator isn't outside the simulation at all. Maybe it's you. A future post-physical version of you, running this life to learn something, to experience something that can't be learned from the outside, like pain, love, or growth. If so, then this simulation is for you. Some scientists are actually trying to test the simulation hypothesis. They propose looking for the limits in the resolution of space, signs of a grid-like structure at the smallest scale, or examining cosmic rays to see if they exhibit strange patterns that don't align with the natural universe. There's also research into whether quantum entanglement, a phenomenon Einstein called spooky action at a distance, could indicate shortcuts in a simulation architecture. But here's the problem. If the simulation is advanced enough, it could easily hide any signs of its existence. After all, if you were designing a perfect simulation, wouldn't you make sure the creations never figure it out? So here's the $1 million question. Even if we are simulated, so what? Is love any less real because it's pre-programmed? Is suffering less painful if it was rendered by code? You still feel, you still think, and you still choose. And maybe that's all reality ever is. The simulation hypothesis forces us to confront the nature of truth, meaning, and perception, not to escape it, but to clearly see it. Because if we are in a simulation, it doesn't mean life is meaningless. It might mean it's more meaningful than we thought. A deliberate experience, a chosen scenario, a cosmic test. Maybe we'll never prove the simulation hypothesis until we create one of our own. Maybe it's an intellectual trap, a cosmic mirror. Or maybe it's true, and will one day break the veil. But in either case, it challenges us to ask the real questions. What makes something real? What does it mean to be conscious? And how should we live when the nature of existence itself is up for debate? So what do you think? Are we inside a simulation? And if we are, what's the point of it all? Drop your theories in the comment below. We try and read every one. If you love exploring the edge of science, consciousness, and cosmic mysteries, hit the subscribe button and join us in this strange ride through the unknown. Because here at WhyDecrypted, nothing is quite as it seems.